Actually, in studio, we'll be having Honorable John Kaguchia, Speaker of Nyeri County, who's set to be here any moment from now. But Honorable Didmus Barasa, the Member of Parliament of Kimilili, is already in studio. And these are the gentlemen that are going to help us decipher on the politics of the day. Been there long enough and therefore can paint a clear picture of what is likely to culminate come 2022. And even as we speak about that, I'll allow them to help us go through the papers. Mahesh, I'm sorry, I should have been, fair enough to have shared this before, but here we are. So much is playing out in regards to politics. Well, the key stories captured on the papers first as we celebrate Kipchoge, Eliud Kipchoge, and the sportsmen and women who have done us proud. Maybe briefly, just what needs to be done to make sure that we celebrate these individuals that are indeed worth celebrating. Many have felt like, they've not been accorded the respect that they deserve. And it's not the first time that we are having, our sportsmen and women making us proud, especially in the aspect of Olympics, the athletes, they have constantly made us proud. But over the years, they've not done much, or the country has not done much towards fating them, towards celebrating them, towards making, long-term, gains or long-term solutions as to the problems that continue to bedevil this particular sector of the sports industry.
Yes, I want to agree with you that our sports men and women have had usually their hopes lie with the philanthropists. You look at the type of field they train in. Some of them even run in bushes, in mountains. We do not have proper facilities in support of them. Yeah. And even when they win gold and they come back, we don't do anything. That's true. The government must have a policy framework in terms of how we are going also to reward our sportsmen and women, especially when they fly the flag of this country high. What we are doing now is guesswork. We don't know what is going to be done to them. And I think that one also demotivates them in terms of working very hard, making this country proud, and putting this country on an international map. So we have to do something in terms of appreciating our sportsmen and women. Most of them are languishing in poverty. Not just athletes, but we have had, people, very great footballers in this country. We've had people who have put Kenya on the national map in volleyball, but the government today doesn't support them. We have left their lives to be in the hands of philanthropists whose support depends on availability of resources. Yes. All
right, Mheshimiwa Farah Maalim, I always say, you've been here long enough, and since we are reactionary in nature, a majority of us have taken time to celebrate our athletes, sportsmen and women at that point when they make us proud. And, during this moment, we can capitalize to say that, what much needs to be done. Just how much has been pushed, at the level of governance, at the level of, parliament, in terms of, just coming up with bills that would help, cushion our sportsmen and women, and what needs to be done, at least now that we are reacting to the fact that we have been made proud.
I think we need to come now with the realization we've been taking our sportsmen the last 6 years. And there has to be a difference. As it is right now, we have too many of them who are languishing in poverty and who are literally abject in the future. And nobody's doing anything about it. I have a lot of faith and confidence that this time around, Anna Mohammed might want to really change that role. It's very good, very highly motivated and impressive. If you could say that everybody who gets a gold medal gets so much money also as a reward back at home, let's say 10 million, 15 million, 50 million, I don't know how much. And anybody who brings us a silver medal also gets something less than the bronze medal. And anybody who makes it to the team, anybody who makes the Olympic team, so that they can still work harder and make sure that the next Olympic they do better, is also given a certain minimum amount of money, say $1 million or $2 million just per person. It gives them an opportunity to be able to get a certain life for themselves, because quite often, when these people want to achieve a substantial that they will fit in sports. The tendency to sacrifice other areas like education, the rest of it. And then we have to have a system in government that is going to work close with these successful athletes so that their money and the money they make in international engagements properly invested, because sometimes they're very young people and they enjoy this thing, they blow it up, and you can only stay in form for a limited period of time. Then they come down again to some kind of a poverty again, you know? Yeah. So I think there has to be a totality in the mind to approach this. And at the same time, those ones who are young and doing exercise sports must also be grounded on their own academic exploits, so that one does not suffer at the cost of the other. So there is a whole lot of things that the government needs to do, because this is our children, and frankly, our children. The other thing is that, as Didmus put, although we have some of the best training facilities up there in Nandi area, and as a matter of all those people came and did very well in other engagements like more Farah, like the two Somali, the Belgian Somali and the Dutch Somali, have also been training in Kenya. For long distance, we have the best training facility. But that also needs to be dovetailed to the common, very ordinary young boys and girls who do not have the means themselves to pay for the government to come in. So there are a number of things that one needs to do, and it's not an easy thing. The earlier we do it, the better.
All right. Well, it's interesting to watch, and we all hope that we won't have to lose our sportsmen and women going to proudly run for other countries just because the situation at home is not as good. And we are proud that we got at least 4 golds, we got at least 4 silvers and 2 bronzes on this unprecedented moment of course, Olympic run, and we are thankful for that reason. We dropped that one. Honorable Didmus Barasa, the matatus are back to carrying full capacity.
There is no problem. Planes are carrying full capacity. SGR is carrying full capacity. So why will we, as a country, appear to be engaging in double standards? That we have a COVID regulation that guides, the aeroplanes and SGRs. Then we have others that differentiates the hustlers who fly matatu business. Planes,
there's some bit of discipline, and SGR, some bit of more discipline, unlike the rogue matatu industry, as they would call it.
Nobody, we like saying rogue matatu industry. I mean, these are Kenyans who have already, they have their own arrangements. You get into a matatu, you see they have sanitizers. A majority of the Kenyan people are also working with their own sanitizers, and they are wearing on a mask. So if you are wearing on a mask, and the reason as to why people wear masks is to avoid, those kind of spread of COVID-19. Right. You see everybody wearing a a mask. When it comes to the fight against COVID-19, the always largely depends on an individual. What you do at night, no one knows.
Right, that's true.
We have market centers that are going on like ever before. You've seen also political leaders holding rallies, going to churches and attracting huge crowds around them from all the political divide. So why would you want us to demonize the matatu sector?
Well, interesting to notice that anyway, they were carrying in full capacity, even during these times where they had been stopped. So there's really nothing
They should not be, because they should not be stopped. Kenyans must get to work.
Right.
In time. They have no time to buy cars. They have no money to buy cars. They have no money to hire taxis, and that the only available means of transport is to getting into a matatu. So if we are going again to limit the number of passengers that are being carried in a matatu, we are going also to inconvenience very many Kenyans.
Yeah. Schools though are congested.
Yes, the few who are surviving in employment industry should not also lose their jobs because they have not come to work.
That's true.
So as a country, we must also move away from containing people, confining people, affecting people's enterprises, into vaccinating everybody and allow the country to go back like what is happening in the UK. Yes.
Before I loop in Honorable Speaker of the Nyeri County, that is Honorable Kaguchia, not to go back to the events of last week while you were opening, one of the schools back at home, but schools are congested today. What will it take for us to make sure that our students are safe? Honorable Barasa.
You know, we have been told by the medical researchers that the school-going children, the young people, have a very strong immunity.
Yeah.
The people that we fear for their lives are the teachers who are a bit old and they have their immunity maybe not in a proper way, compromised by other age and other underlying factors. And that so far, so good, we've not had situations where we lose pupils and students due to COVID-19, but we've lost a number of teachers, and it remains a puzzle. It's something that we should not accept, that at this time, very many years after the first COVID-19 case was reported in this country, that the government has not vaccinated all the teachers. And this is something that the government can purpose to ensure it's done within a week, that we have every teacher vaccinated against COVID-19, and also the Teacher Service Commission has records of teachers who have underlying issues. Then a way must be found to ensure that these teachers who have underlying issues, underlying conditions, and also those who are almost retiring, something has to be done administratively to ensure that they are taken care of, not to be exposed to this deadly virus. So that's what the government need to do, and this one doesn't require legislation by the National Assembly. It just requires a commitment of resources by government, and also trying to put in some administrative leverage to be able to safeguard the life of these teachers.
Honorable Kaguchia, good to have you this morning. I hope Nyeri is well. I hope you've been well since the last time you are here. Good to have you. We are looking at the papers briefly. This one on, of course, what the sportsmen and women have done, of course, at that level of Tokyo, and making us proud once more. Tough rules and as matatus return, full capacity, and also the aspect of schools. Briefly.
Yeah, thank you very much, Linda. I'm happy to be back this morning to this show. And I want to agree with my colleagues that indeed we are proud as Kenyans because of the good performance that has been exhibited by our athletes. And it's something that as Kenyans we take note of, and makes us very, very proud as amongst other African countries, even in the world. And this is not the first time we are performing so well. We've done so before, even better. And we have also performed pretty well in other disciplines, like in rugby. There is also another discipline that we used to perform so well, that is cricket. If you go to most of the Arabian countries, even when you go to Arabian and Asian countries, when you go to taxis and when you go even to hotels and any other place and you say you come from Kenya, most of them till today, they will mention a name that some Kenyans may not remember, Tikolo.
Wow.
You come from Kenya, Tikolo?
Right.
And why is Tikolo so famous, in those Asian countries and the Arabian countries? Because he was the top cream de la cream when it came to the issue of cricket. So it means that as Kenyans, we have good potential to excel. If we put discipline first, we can do so well in so many areas. Remember, even in rugby, we have beaten even some of the very, very tough teams in the world to emerge at the very top. What we need to do as a country, because I found my friend Honorable Farah Maalim handling that question, as to how then should we as a country be able to ensure that we ingrain this and we mainstream it in our system, so that we are able to have more athletes who can excel, and as a country we can even do much, much better, so that we not just stop at the level of being proud and just being happy about the performance of the few that have gone to this level. And I think first, as a country, we need to know that the fact that we are doing well in some of the disciplines, it means that we have the potential to do well in most of the other disciplines.
Right.
So we need to field candidates in most of the other disciplines. Because if you look at some of these countries like the USA, the reason why they go home with more medals than some of us is because their athletes are participating in a lot of disciplines across board. So that's what we need to do. And that way we will be able to perform so well also in disciplines that we have not been performing so well in, or we have not even been fielding candidates before. The government need to come up with policies that recognize and appreciate people's talents right from the word go, right from when they are very, very young. And for example, like our young people from the Rift, it's clear that it's inborn in most of them that when they are growing up, there seems to be some gene in them that helps them to do so well in athletics. So the country need to invest in that in a bigger way, very systematically, very consciously, and very, very deliberately.
Right.
Yeah, so, well, commenting probably on the issue of the Matatu and the COVID, yes, indeed, COVID is now hitting us pretty hard. We are having really devastated society across the country. I don't know whether it's happening in other areas or it's just where I'm coming from, but we are totally devastated by the COVID menace. Of course, from the face of it, it sounded like ironical and like a paradox when the ministry is lifting the ban on Matatu full capacity at the height of this pandemic, when there's a wave. But the reality is, or the truth of the matter is, the Matatus have been carrying full capacity. So lifting this ban would only help them to stop being extorted by rogue policemen. And that's why I agree with my friend here, Mheshimiwa Barasa, that let's not call the Matatus rogue. Sometimes the way they behave is also because of how they are treated by the system itself. So you find that, like now, when these rules have been in place, some of them have been seriously extorted, for some reasons. And of course, that becomes like a business for another person. So once that ban is lifted, it means then that you cannot then extort the Matatu operators in any way. Yeah, they generally have been operating at full capacity. Very few countries have been able to very seriously follow some of these rules. I think what we still need to do is to ensure that people are on mask. We need to ensure that the Matatus self-regulate themselves, so that their passengers are on mask. The social distancing may be a challenge, but they can put on 2 masks and ensure that there's sanitizer and that at the main stages there is a water-pointed soap that people can wash their hands. And that way we will still be able to control this menace to a great deal.
All right, we watched that. Those are the key stories as captured on the papers, aside from the political stories. And just to loop us into the conversation, remember it's the state of the nation. And the question that we asked this morning is, our democracy in danger? One of the key things that we look at, it is exactly 1 year to the next general elections. It is August the 8th, that is 2020. We look forward to see what plays out in August the 8th, 2022. So this is 2021, yes. So we wait to see what plays out in 2022. The key men to be watched, Honorable Farah, Maalim, if you can hear me. In preparations to this, the People Daily captures the key figures that we are watching to see what, of course, they will do, even as we prepare for the next general elections. If at all there's going to be a general elections, the key faces as captured by this particular paper. The president himself, Honorable Wafula Chebukati also. We have Honorable, that is the Deputy President William Ruto, Right Honorable Raila Odinga, the CJ, Martha Koome, CS for Matters Health, that is Mutahi Kagwe, Ukur Yetani on Matters Economy, and Jeremiah Kioni, who will be pushing, or he has been pushing for the postponement of the general election. Whether it succeeds or not is a question of wait and see. And on Matters Security, whether we'll be able to have that peaceful coexistence, we look at the likes of police boss Hilary Mutyambai. 1 year to the general elections, how would we say we have performed so far as Kenyans in terms of maintaining sobriety, tolerance, and just how ready would we be then for the next general elections?
Well, the two adjectives that you mentioned, the sobriety Yeah, we have maintained that. We have maintained the peace, we maintained the stability, the serious sobriety. And I think since the handshake, the country has more or less come together. Everything else hasn't done very well. The economy has not done well at all. It's a challenge. It's a very problem because it's also compounded by the global pandemic itself and many other things. But as far as the piece of land, yes, we have achieved. I do see there is an element by some politicians to try and whip up certain sympathies and supports and the rest of it. In the process, there's a little bit of browbeating, threats, and but that's to be expected. That's to be expected. And trying to say certain sympathies. One thing is not questionable. We do not live in a state of, like we're living in a state of there's a government in place. Mm-hmm. And statecraft has got certain universal textures that you find from whether it is a liberal democracy, whether it is even a socialist leaning, or whatever it is, you still have to find those things. That is, there has to be order. There has to be a very straight path for the executive. Power itself is usually not that well paired. We give power to, in our country, in the executive, the presidency, and the presidency is only exhibited by one party. And that goes for everywhere. I mean, in America, we have Biden there as the president. There is absolutely nothing that Kamala can do without Biden telling her to do.
Right.
Well, I know it is a very unenviable position to be a deputy president or vice president anyway. I remember very well way back when JFK was the president of the United States of America and Lyndon B. Johnson was his number 2. If you're lucky, the president dies in office and you take over without making an effort, the same way Suluhu has done it with Magufuli. But other than that, and in the absence of that, you just have to sit on a block of ice with your pants down and enjoy the experience, because that's what it is. That's the nature. You are there. Even in the Constitution, it says the role of the deputy president, with an exception of one or two things, he works at the pleasure of the president. He does not hold the office at the pleasure of the president. The spirit of 10-1 now. Mm-hmm. Fortunate for us to occupy that position during the old constitution. The president could get rid of you anytime, right from the time when we got independence. But then again, you are a heartbeat away from the presidency should the unlikely happen and the president drops dead from a heart attack or falls in his own bathroom or anything happen. You are supposed to be sworn in immediately. You don't even wait for the former president to be buried. You are immediately sworn in. I remember Lyndon B. Johnson, when John F. Kennedy was killed in Dallas, mm-hmm. was sworn on the plane up in the air with us or the coffin of John F. Kennedy just next to him there, his former president, his former boss. So there's never a vacuum in the presidency. That's why it's important for the state or the system to know where the deputy president is at any given time and to be secure. So yeah, we are looking at these things within that very narrow, myopic political contestations of the day, but it's important for us to look at the wider effect. So everything else is fine. It has got problems, but I'm convinced that we have a stability. I am also convinced that we're going to have a free and fair elections. And I'm also convinced that we'll have a proper transfer of power. And I think also everything will be done on time. Some people might want to postpone this for another year. I don't see that happening, to be honest with you. The mood in the country is that much against that. So if there's BPI that we have to complete certain aspects of it, because there's need for that universal the referendum itself to have the universal suffrage, we will do what we can to Parliament, in my opinion, whatever changes that we can make, that's allowed through Parliament with a 2/3 majority. I think the rest will have to wait until we have a cabinet in place.
All right.
So and the contest will continue.
Okay.
The contest will continue. We'll have a new president. He might not be any of the people, you know what I mean? You never know. And let's see, and keep this country cool. Let's not try and create, let's not be careless with the way we conduct ourselves. We've already seen the ICC before. This time, I think the country is going to be very serious on that, and the government of the day.
All right.
And you find yourself behind bars, not in ICC. I don't even suggest that we go for ICC. We have a local, the facility that deals with such people and puts them away forever. And that way, somebody will have to know that the consequences are bad if you try and incite people against one another, or try and create a bloodshed one way or the other, or try and blackmail the nation because you want certain things and you must get it. So these are the kind of things that we should all be looking at, focusing, internalizing, and making sure it's not a problem. Can I just say one thing about the sports?
Make it brief.
By the way, I'll make it very, very brief. Rift Valley, particularly Kalenjin Rift Valley, is perfect gifted. There's genetic disposition. By the way, every pastoralist area in this place, because of their build, these are slim, tall people, and basically look after camels and cows and goats and sheep. In northeastern provinces, one area, if we get the facilities, we try and exploit those potential, we could easily find an area that matches also Kalenjin Valley. And that's going to bring us a lot of gold medals from all over the world. So there is need also to try and develop that potential. The same way, soccer and cricket and rugby need to be that much also developed in Western Kenya. I think let's look at the potentials in different parts of the country and see how we can exploit them and develop them.
Well said. Well said. The irony of this all is that we've also politicized this whole thing. And for a moment, you find that there are individuals who will not celebrate the likes of Eliud Kipchoge simply because they appear to be Tanga-Tanga. You know, that's the irony, and we really need to condemn that. And the others who would say, you know, it's a Tanga-Tanga win. And it's just funny how we're carrying it. But then again, we need to shun away from that. If at all, we have to realize the gains that Farah Maalim speaks of. Kaguchia, briefly, from what Farah Maalim has articulated in regards to the preparations to the general elections, he has hugely faulted the DP for, you know, just taking up a step a little bit early, you know, when we still do not have a vacuum in the presidency. We'll be coming to that later on, just to look at the ramifications of the same, just to see whether it is what would be looked at as his undoing as at now. But just what is your view on the fact that we are 1 year to the general elections? Generally, in terms of preparedness, the BBI conversation is still here. We're waiting to see what the appellate court is going to say, and so much more.
Well, I do not want to look at this with the background of individuals per se. I would like to look at it from the preparedness as a country. When you look at first the issue of financial and economic, rather let me call it just financial, budgetary allocation. Have we as a country allocated sufficient resources to prepare for this election? And of course, if you listen to IEBC, because they're the ones who inform us about how prepared they are in terms of finances, they do not seem to think they have sufficient resources. So 1 year ahead of this election, IEBC are crying foul in terms of the resources that they have been allocated. That's number one. Then when you look at the issue of preparedness in terms of capacity, it's only now when we are going through the process of installing the commissioners. Remember, we have had 4 years to do this, especially from the time the other commissioners resigned. But it's only now that you're doing that. So you have 4 commissioners now awaiting approval by the National Assembly and appointment by His Excellency the President. And we are at a point in time when they ought to have prepared all the details. They ought to have known even the system that we shall use. They ought to have known the service providers who will provide certain services. Procurement for all those things ought to have been in process now. But remember, it's only now when we are hiring them. When will they prepare themselves? When will they be able to tackle all the challenges that have been bedeviling the IEBC? Remember the Kliger report that stated that the commissioners ought to have been in place earlier, you know. So that is one of the challenges that we have. Now, when we come to legislation, you find it's like the political class has been dilly-dallying on certain kind of legislations. Well, it's understood that the BBI may have faltered along the way, and hopefully that is what some of the political class ought to have used to fix certain legislative issues. But now you see every other political party now seems to be pushing for certain kind of legislation, particularly the handshake side, which seems to be pushing for certain aspects of change in legislation.
Right.
Some of them which were partly captured in the BBI. And you see, at what point do you push this legislation and prepare for the election? For example, some of the changes which are proposed have to do with the boundaries review. Some of the changes that are proposed have to do with the issue of changes in some of the issues that are affecting our Article 255 of the Constitution that have to go back to the referendum. Some of them, the politician, like what Honorable Kioni is bringing to the floor, is taking to the floor of the Assembly. At the face of it, it looks like he would wish to have this passed by the National Assembly and settle at that point. But the truth of the matter is, if you look at our Constitution clearly, Article 255, some of the issues that he has proposed have to do with issues that have been clearly indicated by the Constitution that they must be taken to the referendum. So it again takes us back to where we have been with the issue of BBI.
Right.
So it's a challenge where we are today, and looking at how we are now trying to rush things at this point in time. I can say as a country, we have systematically ensured that we are not preparing properly for this election. And that is not good for us as a country. What is my proposal on the way forward? I would propose, that let us stop all those other things that we are doing that have to do with changes in legislation, that have to do with anything that is not focusing on preparing for the election directly in terms of logistics, in terms of budgetary allocation, in terms of capacity enhancement, in terms of procurement. Anything that does not have to do with that must be stopped at this point in time and help all the systems to do what we call an RRI, a rapid initiative. So that is a rapid result initiative. So that every organ of government is focused, its mind, its thinking, its resources, its capacity on enhancing all the bodies, all the organs that have to do with preparation for the election. So that we do an election in the next 1 year. Because failure to do that definitely would be unconstitutional. And it will not be taking us as a country to the right direction, especially when it comes to a peaceful coexistence between all the Kenyans when we do not obey and we don't follow our constitution.
Honorable Didmus Barasa, at the level of Parliament, you probably have had the privilege of seeing what it is that Honorable Jeremiah Kioni presents. One, we're going to have an election come 2022, and what are the chances of these proposals that he pushes for to survive?
One, I want to say that Parliament has a role of making laws anytime.
Yep.
We are not restrained by any law, that we should not pass any law when we are nearing the elections. Second thing is that, we make elections in this country to be like a very huge thing, yet it's a very simple exercise. Elections in the country revolve around 4 things: voter registration, voter identification at the point of voting, vote tallying, and the announcing of the winner. The processes that guides all these 4 things that I've said are a bit administrative. So whether we will pass any law that will, all the laws that we pass or that are proposed are meant to safeguard the integrity of all these processes.
Right.
And even as Parliament continues to pass, legislations that will affect elections in terms of in terms of how it's done. We are not stopping IEBC from preparing for these elections. So IEBC have got all the time to prepare. And from where I sit, I think what only IEBC needs is money. Otherwise, they are prepared to hold an election. Of course, like I've said, it revolves around the 4 things, which is a very simple exercise.
Yeah.
We would want to see a situation where even printing of ballot papers should be done locally here, even by IBC itself, just a piece of paper. We have seen LSK, even SACCOs, when they go to elect their SACCO officials, they just print some papers on the names of the people who are contestants. Right. We make it look like it's a very huge exercise. We go to, it's like the ballot papers are special papers. I mean, elections in any country is a simple exercise. But the person who's bringing confusion in our electoral, in our political system is the office of the political parties. They are not following the law. Okay. They are operating like cartels. If the office of the political parties really is out to follow the law, some parties will not be existing in this country. We have some parties who have even never held a National Executive Council meeting. Mm-hmm. We have parties which are being registered and they don't even have offices. They have briefcase offices. Mm-hmm. There are so many political parties here. For example, I give an example of what is happening in Fort Kenya. Mm-hmm. The wrangles that are happening in Fort Kenya. This is something that can be resolved within the shortest time possible, mm-hmm. Yeah. But because of the office of the register of political parties is operating like a cartel, the wrangles will drag on and on, like it's taking the whole time to be resolved. Yeah. So for us to have sanity in our political system, the office of register of political parties must take a bipartisan approach and assist political parties live within their ideologies, be guided by the ideologies. Some of these parties are formed for economic reasons. Mm-hmm. Some will form a political party to go and sell. Others will form a political party to go and negotiate with the others with the view of being paid money. So we are really going back to the days that made Kenyans, change laws to make the office of the regional political parties independent. But they are no longer independent. That is where the problem is coming from. If I were that office, even Jubilee Party would not be existing, could have been dissolved a long time ago. Right. Jubilee Party has never held any National Executive Council meeting. Yeah. They have never held any NDC meeting. You see them talking about, forming a merger with the other political parties, yet there is no such kind of things. Things can only be made by the National Delegates Conference. You see, they have not done so. And the office of the political parties is just keeping quiet. Right. It is part of the mess that we have to correct in the political systems of this country.
The irony of it all, and probably just to loop in Honorable Farah Maalim, you have the confidence of working with the Ford Kenya party. The likelihoods, at least from what it is that we see politically today, and President Uhuru Kenyatta acknowledging that he would support, if the NASA team or the previous NASA team would work together, would conglomerate to work together. Parties really that have floated the rules in terms of, what is expected of them, in terms of the Political Parties Act, in terms of making sure that they're supposed to hold this meeting. Where do you get the confidence that Ford Kenya, under the banner of Moses Wetangula, is formidable enough when you see meetings again held by the likes of the Secretary General and, Wafula Wamunyinyi saying that, they are going to give the stance of the party within no time. I mean, it's a bit of a confusion. Why would you believe that Ford Kenya is worth a party working with?
The parties work with parties because they have the votes. They have the numbers in terms of translating into votes. And undoubtedly, Ford Kenya is an old party. It's the party that got me into parliament the first time in 1992. And at that time, it was headed by Jaramogi Oginga. As to the wrangles between his former secretary, or the former Secretary General Eseli and Munyinyi and Wetangula, I think that matter is in court. It's not something that it can easily be determined by us. It's not a political matter, it's a legal matter now. Who is rightfully legally in office. It doesn't matter how much we would want to be or the other one to be. But I think let's leave that to the court itself. So far, Wetangula has got the instrument of the party. I think the court has more or less maintained the status quo before they pushed. But then one thing is not questionable. I mean, it's a formidable, what you call vote-rich area, the Bukusu, the Bungoma, Webuye, and close to 40% of Western Kenya is that community. So we'll see what essentially is going to happen. But it is a party. It looks like a party. It's been a party. It has a history. The rest of it, in terms of the rankings, is a matter for the courts to determine. Mm-hmm. As of all of the political parties office in the country, I think they're trying to work within the law as much as possible. It's a new kind of ombudsman in the area of political parties, ombuds partner. Let's see. I can't seriously vote, because if she comes hard on the political parties, then we will say they're trying to micromanage the political parties. So that leeway, I mean, that kind of a flexibility, it's there in all democracies when these things have got. There's nothing rigid. It does not have the military discipline. It doesn't have any military discipline. We will see what happens in this case. At the end of the day, political parties are all chaotic. Look at the Democratic Party in the States and the GOP, the Grand Old Party, which is the Republic. Or you go to the UK and see the Tories and the Labour and the other two small ones, the Social Democrats and whatever you call them, the Liberals and others. Mm-hmm. So Lib Dems, yeah. So it's all over. I mean, everywhere where there are political parties, there's a democracy, a measure of democracy. That chaotic nature is part of that thing. You will deal with that on a case-by-case basis. And I think some parties that are doing very well, for example, the party, the Wiper, the active movement, we hold our meetings very often. Mm. We even have today a function on a Monday like this. But that, of course, has to be respected by all parties. And by the way, whenever there is a strongman syndrome in a party, the tendency is, the rest of them are just foot soldiers, they follow. And that happens in Jubilee, it happens in ODM, okay. It happens in here is everybody else is a follower. And so, and you go to ODM, and Raila is there, people sing his songs there, and it happens. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's a bit of flexibility and a bit of internal democracy in the ANC. I know that very well. In Wiper also has got a bit of that internal democracy. KANU has ceased to be as powerful as it used to be before, so there's an element of that legacy to internal democracy too. Well, but these are challenges all over. These are challenges all over. And right. People, Kenyans have a tendency, they have an appeal towards people who are abrasive, people who are insulting, the leaders who can go out there on the dais and call others names. All right. Which by the way is not in any, is quite a lot. As seen as some kind of heroes. I mean, Raila Odinga will go up there and call others names. William Ruto has done. Uhuru has done many times before. Mm. I mean, that also is an unfortunate placed assumption of what a hero is. If we think a hero is the one who can call others names, but that's also another problem with our society. We have not been able to transition ourselves from the colonial era, mm-hmm. when whoever stands up against the government was seen as a hero, to the management of public affairs in a democracy the way we have right now, and in that contestation of the democratic itself.
All right, fair enough. And hence the question whether our democracy is at stake, whether it is in danger. And so we'll be delving deep into understanding that as we look at the events of stopping the DP from traveling, who now says or faults the government for targeting his allies. And so we take a quick breather and we come back on that very note and understand some more on what Honorable Farah Maalim speaks about, that, in most cases, deputies really do not have much, capacity to dictate what plays out in the country. And therefore, does this then mean to the broadcast? Still with me, Honorable Didmus Barasa, Honorable John Kaguchia and Honorable Farah Maalim, who is joining us virtually. And gentlemen, let's get to this conversation as to whether then we should get worried about our democracy as it stands today. When you look at a scenario where the Deputy President faults the government that he sits in as to, of course, going against the laws of, the Constitution, then you get to a point where you are worried as a people. Deputy President William Ruto has asked the government not to use the criminal justice system to drive the country's politics in the wake of an arrest of this Turkish business person allied to him. According to the Deputy President, this then will scare away, investors from the country. And typically, he looks at this as a scenario where the government is targeting on his allies just because they are supporting him. And like Honorable Farah Maalim mentioned it, maybe it was a little bit too early for the Deputy President to go out there politicking at a time when he is supposed to support the president, in terms of making sure that the people of Kenya are able to realize the developments as promised by the Jubilee Party. Farah Maalim acknowledges the fact that, yes, maybe he would have come in a little bit later, and also accepts the fact that, in as much as we would say that we would want the Deputy President to actively help in, the processes of the government and what his senior is doing, reality is that he doesn't have much of a say. So many have castigated him in terms of what he proposes, the bottoms-up approach and the numerous changes that he would bring in government, saying that, you're in government right now, why are you not doing much? Do you acknowledge the fact that maybe, just when he ascends, if at all he will ascend, he would do something totally different from what the Jubilee government is doing today in terms of growth of the economy and the country?
Yeah, well, I think when you make certain public pronouncements, they bind you. Okay. And I'm one of the people who is very happy about the kind of pronouncements that are made by politicians. Because what happens is that the moment you now have a government and you start implementing the agenda of that government, one of the things that will always be guiding light is the public pronouncements that you did make. And when, for example, you make pronouncements that your approach will be much more targeted to the masses than to individuals and to well-doing and well-performing institutions and companies, then it means that once you are in government, it's expected that first, all the bureaucracy that you put in place will concentrate on that approach. Whatever policies they make will be more friendly towards your publicly acknowledged model that you go for. And that's why I'm happy that generally everyone seems to be discussing, for example, this bottom-up model. To me, I think it's a good thing. Some people may think otherwise, but for me, I think it's really a good thing that for once, we seem to be discussing something that is close to an ideology. Never mind how it is vilified and dismissed, but it's important that as Kenyans, we discuss issues that are more focused on something that can be used publicly to change the way we do things and the way we think. I was looking at just the way we do things, for example, and without having to really criticize some of the Jubilee's legacy projects. But I've been looking at something like the expressway that we are having from JKIA to James Gishuru. And you see, this is an expressway that is going to be moving many cars, and moving them across the city. But sometimes when you visit other developed world, you find what the countries are doing at this point in time is not to move cars more, but to move masses. You move masses so that the same resources, for example, we are using to move cars from JKIA to the other side of the city. We use the same resources, but come up with something like, there's something we call a tram, for example, a small train that you put on the rail, and you have it moving every other 5 minutes. It's moving people. And when you move masses, then you don't have to move the cars. Because even the people will leave their cars home, or they will leave them to some parking somewhere, so that they can be moved because they're being moved faster. And we are going to use the same resources. So what happens is that the moment now you start discussing those kind of ideologies, somehow people will rethink on what policies are they putting in place. If you want to invest 1 billion shillings, you will be asking yourself, how much is this 1 billion going to impact more people than create convenience for a few people who move things? You know, you move more people, you impact more people. So I think generally it would be important that we encourage this kind of debate. And what I'm looking forward to myself, and I'll be very excited, is to see counter models, for example, where we do not only question one model, but we also come up with counter models, you know, where they're going to be placed on the table. And we now, the people who engage on intellectual discourse, we can look at those models and now add them. You know, we critically look at them so that we can add, so that by the end of the day, we have good ideas competing.
Right.
So that by the end of the day, we have the best idea winning. Other than to look like we are pulling each other down and like we don't want people who think to think. And I think that would be defeatist. And for our country to grow, for our country to continue doing well, we need to add brains to brains. Other than create immeasurable amount of time trying to reduce what someone else has thought about. Yeah, so basically, I think it's good what we are doing. I think it's good where we are going. But then you have also asked another question to do with the issue of what Farah Maalim mentioned about, the issue of the deputy president. I think one of the challenges which I find is that we seem to kind of be operating with the thinking of the old constitution. You know, in the old constitution, the deputy president or the vice president was directly elected or nominated by the president. And for that reason, they were 100% a subject of the presidency or the president. But in this case, we have a new constitution, which I think if we are uncomfortable with, we can change it. It could even be a part of what you are proposing in the BBI or even in the legislation that we are doing, whereby if you have an elected deputy president together with the president, you see, it becomes very difficult now to kind of now try to contain the political ambitions of the deputy president, so long as they are elected together with the president, so long as both of them went to campaign. It becomes a bit tricky. And it is hypocritical for us to assume like the deputy president, for example, is appointed by the president.
Right.
If they are elected together, then you would expect that you will see what you're seeing here, that a deputy president will also be on the table and saying, well, I also did contribute to this, I'm also part of this. And then the other last thing I would say, if truly we do not want to have this kind of scenario in future, then maybe, just maybe, we should say, if you are elected a deputy president, then you should not contest for the presidency in the coming election.
Wow, interesting.
That way then, as a deputy president, they will not have political ambitions. Because like in the case you look at now, if you are to be very practical, you have a deputy president who sees his position as the president in the coming election being threatened by a handshake, and then you hope and expect that he will, you know, lie low. You see, constitutionally, the way he has now been empowered, or that position has been empowered, and William Ruto is the first person now to occupy that position. To me, what we are seeing is important for people who are interested in political and intellectual discourse. We are looking at this very, very critically because we want to improve this system so that we can look at it in a more elaborate, more objective way, other than in a more myopic and more narrow-minded way that is just looking at personalities and that is just looking at even just this election that is coming. We need to look at this in a broader manner. If we are totally uncomfortable with the happenings of the political landscape in this country between the president and the deputy president, then maybe, just maybe, we need to put a clause like the one we put for commissioners. You know, as a commissioner, you can't, if you are particularly in IBC, you can't come and vie in an election that is following after your resignation or retirement or once you leave office. Maybe we need to do some of those things, if at all we are so uncomfortable. Otherwise, we should allow the system to kind of find its true north as it's pulling and pushing, and it will somehow settle as we move on.
Honorable Didmus Barasa, and as you react to what Kaguchia speaks of, do you suppose then that the government is in a way misusing the criminal justice system, playing politics as allies to the deputy president on numerous occasions? Your colleagues, if not you, at some point have complained about the fact that they are being targeted just because they are working in tandem with the deputy president.
First, I want to say that I don't see any problem when the deputy president criticizes the same government that he participated in forming. I say so because, and I will give you valid examples. We've had, it's not the first time to criticize his own government. Even Uhuru Kenyatta, at times, positively criticizes his own government. I'll give you an example of when he said that ESCC was not doing anything, was not doing his job properly. He has given them the money and the resources they require, and they asked them, "Mnataka nifanye nini jamani?" You know, that was a criticism. Even when he visits even to the port of Mombasa, he laments positively that yes, we are not doing this particular manner properly, and we need to do this other way. During Mwai Kibaki's reign as president of his country, you saw what Mama Lucy was doing. Mama Lucy was assisting his husband run the government properly by lashing out at ministers who are giving directives from the offices as opposed to traveling to see what is happening on the ground. You remember the petroleum tragedy, the Tanga, where he lashed out at Saitoti for issuing directives from the comfort of his offices as opposed to traveling to go and see. Yeah. So when you fight your own government, it's not a bad thing to do. Deputy president is not a jester in the royal crown of Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. He's not the kind of a person who will tell his boss that you are well covered properly when he knows the king is naked. And these are the type of leaders that we need. The tragedy that this country is plunging in is because of people who are unable to tell the head of state the truth. It's only by telling the head of state the truth that will enable him stretch his hand beyond the normal,
it becomes hard
improve
to do
the
so
services
when you appear
of his country.
to be part of the problem.
No. You know, let me tell you, Linda, and this is where Kenyans need to change. The fact that I'm unable to move this cup from here to the other direction, it doesn't mean that I'm unable to write notes. Okay. The fact that I cannot dress in a jeans, it doesn't mean that I cannot wear a suit. So the fact that I've made this mistake, it doesn't mean therefore mean that I'm incapable of providing a solution for this other problem. So you look at every situation in his own merit. Okay. The people who have a problem with William Samoei Ruto are his competitors in 2022. Those who are not his competitors have no problem. No, we have in Kenya, a person is good, a person speaks well, a person means well for the country, a person has good plans for the country if he's aligned to you politically. The day the person becomes your competitor, you become to bastardize that kind of a person, to demonize that kind of a person. Look at what Gotv are talking about Jubilee government. Yes. They are saying Jubilee government is a failure. The Jubilee government is a disaster in this country. But today they are working with the Jubilee government, with the Jubilee party, and we in the Jubilee party, we have not changed our manifesto. We have not changed our culture. From the time they were saying we were a bad party, now they are saying Jubilee is a good party, they want to form a coalition with us. When it comes to people, I'm one of the people who are also saying that
you're being targeted?
Our justice system has been weaponized. It's being used as a tool to intimidate those who do not support Uhuru Kenyatta's political direction. And when I talk about Uhuru Kenyatta's political direction is where Uhuru is saying that he wants to, to sit together with the former NASA principals and, support one of them. Even as we are in Jubilee, we do not support that particular pronouncement because in Jubilee, we had our own plans when we were forming government. We had our own plans of Kumi ya Uhuru Kenyatta and Kumi ya William Ruto. We haven't changed that position. So if the head of Jubilee party, who is President Uhuru Kenyatta, thinks that he has gotten enough from Jubilee party and that he needs to move away from Jubilee party and form a coalition with the ODM and all other NASA principles, that is his own personal opinion and his democratic right to do so. So most of us would not subscribe to that ideologies. Of course, we are targeted, and before an arrest is made on you, the communication will be done to you clearly that this is what is being planned against you. Please go slow. Abandon William, don't be seen with him.
Is that so?
That's how it is.
Okay.
I mean, we are members of parliament and we discuss. The beauty with the MPs that those who are allied to Raila Odinga or to Kalonzo Musyoka or to Kieleweke factions, when we are having tea, we speak clearly. That you saw the members of parliament who are running away from William Ruto axis, joining the Kieleweke. They are beginning to come back slowly, one by one, as the clock ticks towards the general elections, because I am sure by December this year, where we will be aware that there will be nothing much from weaponization of the criminal justice system, and then you will see everybody will begin to run back to us. Because it's not true that only members of parliament or only leaders who appear to support William Ruto are the one who have problems with authorities. You know, even when you are doing a scientific survey and you find out that only a particular group of people are the one who are perceived to be, at loggerheads with the authorities, you know there is something wrong. It's not, for example, the KEMSA scandal. We are told that the files have disappeared, largely because the architects of KEMSA scandal were supported by the deep state, supported by the Kieleweke faction, supported by the narrative of collapsing Jubilee or of merging Jubilee with the ODM and NASA political parties, and nothing has happened. But if the architects of KEMSA scandal were from Tanga, you will see the DCI tweeting, DPP tweeting, convening press conference, briefing the country on how they have enough leads, how people are going to go to court. And you see the way they will dramatize the arrest of such kind of people, with color and pomp, that will make you believe that this person is going to be jailed for life in the next few days. So when we say this, we are not mad people. We are not stupid. We know what we are talking about, that the criminal justice system has been weaponized, is being used to intimidate those who are advancing the hustler nations narrative, those who appear to align themselves with the deputy president, and that's why we are saying that these offices must be independent and they prosecute matters on the basis of merit, on the basis of evidence that is adduced before court, and that the communication of the DPP, of the DCI, our security agencies to the Kenyans on the matters they are investigating must be done in court, not through their Twitter handle, not through their press conferences. That means that they're engaging in politics. They want to send a narrative that Didmus is corrupt, that Kaguchia is not fit to hold the office, which is contrary to what we expect from them by law, that they should communicate those to Kenyans by argument to support their case in court.
And in reaction to this, Honorable Farah, Maalim, and probably just escalating it further, a businessman by the name Bamutaze in Uganda has demanded that the legislators, of course under ODM, be found culpable of breaching the EAC statutes and slapped with costs that will be computed at about 6% annually for the time of award to the time of payment. This because he feels like the persona in the name of President of Uganda, that is Nyeri Museveni, has been attacked. And based on the kind of news that we've heard across, and according to him, this would turn out to be a serious diplomatic blunder. We've seen the utterances that have been there on numerous occasions. We've had a conversation as to what really takes the DP to Uganda. If we are to go this direction, if we are to listen and pick, the argument of Didmus Barasa, don't you then think that indeed our democracy is in danger?
No, let me facts first of all. The president appeared on the ballot box as president himself. In the presidential election, there was a place, if I remember very well, for Uhuru Kenyatta, for Raila Odinga, for all the others. There was never a place for the deputy president. Of course, you register who the deputy president is from the outset, but the person who is subjected with the approval of Kenya, the votes of Kenyans, is the president. the executive. If you look at, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. Look at all other jurisdictions, whether we are working under this new dispensation, any other dispensation. The president, the deputy president, has no life of his own. He has no independence at all. He has no role that he can go and perform himself separate or independent from his own presidency, except what he is instructed to do. If you remember very well, Joe Biden was a very popular deputy president or vice president for Obama. But the party still, after Obama left office, went and settled on somebody else. They settled on Hillary Clinton, who lost to Donald Trump. And much later, they brought him again out from the cold and decided this time is when he's right for these things. When you're working in a political party system, the deputy president has absolutely no authority other than being a personal assistant to the president himself, regardless of whether the Constitution provides or not. Unless, of course, the president passes on when he's still in office, and in which case he takes over that mantle, or basically he waits until it's endorsed by his own party again, run for that position, and then runs on that party. And if he's not very happy with that, he can resign and go and run on another party. Kaguchia, I do understand where you are coming from, but unfortunately, the statecraft itself is not based on anarchy, chaos, and activism, and who is right, who is wrong, who has what right, and have a constitutional right, freedom of women. The American Bill of Rights is most elaborate than any other. But the deputy president, the vice president in America, when he has to go, he goes one with a judge in the same place on an Air Force 2, is guarded 24/7, and has no what do you call even a holiday or private life. That is always under the strict scrutiny of the system itself, just in case something can happen to him, or if the president passes over and this man has to take over. He's fully guarded.
Okay.
You have a very limited, what do you call, so-called private or friends or businesses. You cannot engage in business. In many of the other countries, you can't. You're not even allowed to engage in business. Lest your own national interests can be compromised when you ascend to power. So we are looking at this thing within the philosophy of statecraft itself. And the other thing is, the security machinery in the country has an absolute right to find out if there's money laundering. For example, there are those who believe that the deputy president is not working with an investor, but is moving around his own money, which is probably gotten inside here, and invest them in other places. Your relationship with other countries as a deputy president or a vice president comes under very sharp scrutiny from your own government. You don't have that independence.
All right.
Because there are strategic national interests that can be compromised. Even the president himself does not have, if the deputy president is traveling out to the country, he does it representing his own president, and invariably should even fly in the government plane. He cannot just walk into any airstrip and take any plane there and say, I'm going here, I'm going there. And you expect people out there to just facilitate you. Decide
but why is it that he says he's done that for a cool 9 years without all this drama that is happening right now?
You see, look, I know them both. These people needed to be taken to class and to be schooled on how a state works, how the office of the presidency is supposed to be conducted, how the office of the deputy presidency is supposed to be conducted. There are basic ethics for that, and there are basic structures. That's why an American president, the moment you get elected, you are taken into that private room and you're given all the do's and don'ts. And then you strictly adhere to that. But when you try, like Donald Trump, to live outside that, look at what has happened to him. And our friend, deputy president, is a Donald Trump version of this country, who thinks you can go out there, create your own populism and create anarchy and chaos and do what you want. No, you can't. And the moment somebody tells you, no, this is not how a state works, there are national interests here, there are strategic national security considerations here, and then you say, oh, I'm being witch hunted and the rest. No, that's not how things work. They are bound to do the investigations. They are bound to find out where those resources or those sources of those money are.
All right.
Where this investor brought the money from. This information had that the money is coming from Equity Bank. You don't become an investor and go and borrow from the local domestic banks of a country to again invest in a neighboring country. You see what I mean? I mean,
fair enough, Honorable Farah, fair enough. Let's allow the other gentleman to come in as we close. I know you would want to say something. Allow him to say something, then you come and close it for us. Yes.
No, Farah Maalim is definitely a very brilliant chap. And I like the way he articulates his points. And largely, I have really no problem with his points and the way he has stated. But that as may be, we have our Kenyan situation, which is not necessarily the American situation. And you know what happens in Kenya is that when people are coming together to vie for presidency or even to win government, normally they are bringing their blocks together, they are bringing certain aspects together. And so what would determine how a government is going to be run is much more the pre-election pact or arrangements,
right,
and the post-election pacts. Those ones have a very big impact in Kenya. I mean, in America, you don't have what you have in Kenya. You normally don't have handshakes in America.
Right.
You wouldn't find that because once an opposition loses, or once someone is opposing the president loses, they lose and go. But in Kenya, you find even when they lose, they don't actually go.
That's true.
They hang on, and that would then have very serious implications on how the government is run.
Okay.
So we have a new constitution. Our constitution is only 10 years old, that we had in 2010. And we only have one deputy president ever occupying that position. And we have only had one position of the president, one president who occupied that position since the new constitution.
Right.
So what is happening is that all these gentlemen are breathing life into our constitution.
That's true.
So the things you're seeing happening in the constitution today, the pull and push that you're seeing happening, that is our reality. That is life that they are breathing into the constitution.
Okay.
So by the time you're having a second and a third deputy president, by then we know how to conduct ourselves through constitutionalism, the law, the traditions, the practice, the customs, particularly in Kenya and also elsewhere. But we can't borrow from other countries 100%. We really have to develop our own mantra as a country and our own practice and custom. So what is happening to me, as I said, it is very interesting to watch and see, analyze, criticize, and hopefully we will be able to inform our future based on all these happenings.
All right, you have to make it very fast, Mheshimiwa.
Thank you. First, I want to tell Bamtanze, a Ugandan citizen who has moved to East African Court of Justice, to ignore those ODM characters, that whatever they said is not the position of government, is not, doesn't mean the majority view of Kenyans. It is not the first time they're engaging in these kind of things.
Yeah.
When it comes to the DP's aborted Uganda trip, I want to be very clear that I cannot waste a single minute discussing a matter which even a 28-year-old child will know it's completely petty, perpetuated by people who are drunk with temporary power, and that is coming to an end in the next 1 year.
Thank you. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Time can really run fast when you have so much to discuss. Honorable Didmus Barasa, Member of Parliament, Kimilili, John Kaguchia, Speaker of Nyeri County, and lastly, Honorable Farah Maalim, former Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly. Gentlemen, we close it at that. We still had so much to touch on, but we hope to get a hold of the same some other time. Up next, we are getting to discuss more of the pelvic floor disorders, but it should be after this.